Hi, this is Tiffany Cook with Pure Duchenne Cares. Hope everyone is doing well today. I'm excited to introduce someone today with us, Dr. Missy Dixon. She is a psychologist at the University of Utah and Primary Children's Hospital. We're going to ask her some questions about mental health. How are you doing today, Missy?
I'm well. Thanks, Tiffany. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for joining us. So let's get right to it. We have some questions. So our first question up is, I got this one from another mom, and she indicated, I'm concerned about how my young children may be thinking about COVID-19 and all the changes it's created in our lives. What's the best approach for me to take when it comes to talking to my young children about COVID-19?
That's a great question. I think one of the first things to be aware of is just talking to your children using age appropriate language, and not oversharing information, but giving them enough information to help them feel comfortable where they are. I think you can start with the focus on the why, right, or the purpose of why you're staying home and what is COVID-19, right? If they're very young children, just saying it's a virus, kind of like when you get sick or you're not feeling well and you have to stay home. I think that's okay. That's okay to share with them. This is kind of like that, but we're staying home now because we don't want to catch the virus. And so we are doing this, doing our part as a family to stay home so we don't get sick and so that we don't spread it to any others in our community, because we don't want them to get sick as well. I think it's okay to focus on how the kids are helping, and how you or your family are helping everyone, how you're part of this bigger team, whether it's your neighborhood team or your community team, your church team, your work team, and then our country's team. So you're doing your part to help your team, and to not get sick and not spread a virus. And I think when talking with young kids, it's okay to create this logical and a positive narrative around their experience. So particularly talking about how by staying home, what you're doing is helpful, and in explaining it to parents, right? It's helpful to create this positive experience or positive narrative, because we know from positive psychology studies that during times of stress or change and trauma, this can be helpful in reducing anxiety, reducing that hyperarousal fight or flight that we may experience, reducing avoidance or depression and anger. So I think those are all ways that we can talk about it with our young children. I also think it can be helpful if just to acknowledge, the emotions that they're having around what is happening, and as parents, we can model for our children that as well, right? Like I too am frustrated by the situation that we have to stay at home, but on the positive side, here's what we get to do. We get to spend all this time together, working on things, whether that's your schoolwork or that's things together as a family or puzzles or whatever we're doing. And those are things that we might not necessarily be having all of this time to do together if it weren't for the restrictions around COVID-19. And I think it's also okay to model that you're having emotions about this too, right? Like kind of makes me sad sometimes that I can't leave the house, or makes me sad that we can't see grandma at her house like we normally do on Sundays. And that's frustrating. And so, you know, but we know it's for the better for all of us. And we can model that for them. Sorry, lost track on that one.
That's great. Thank you, Missy.
I think the other thing that we can do, if we're all, you know, talking about emotions is not always the norm in some families. And so it takes a little work. We got to practice doing that. But we do know that when we model this for them, or we talk about it together, we can help reduce that sense of anxiety that we might sometimes feel, or children might sometimes feel. And so if we want to train ourselves to do these things, you can set an alarm on your watch, or you know, your smartphone, maybe once a day or twice a day. And when it goes off, you just have to name the emotion that you're feeling, or acknowledge the emotion that you're feeling. And that's easier for older kids who have a sense of what those emotions are. For younger kids, we can say, how does your body feel right now? Because they typically feel their emotions in their body, or you know, so setting an alarm and you know, forcing ourselves to check in with ourselves and how we're feeling once or twice a day can be really helpful, and then sharing that with each other.
Great advice. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
I have another question for you, and this is a little bit different, but I'm looking for advice for this one. For families who the children may split time between mom and dad, you know, for a divorced family, or some situation of that nature, where one parent isn't as concerned about COVID as the other parent, and maybe they are taking different types of precautions, one taking a little more extreme and less extreme. Do you have any tips on how to balance that?
Sure. I think, as far as, you know, again, age appropriate. So, you know, depending on where those children are, and if they recognize the dynamics, there are certain things you can do, right? You can talk to your children about kind of what you're doing at your house, and what their other parent is doing at their house. Acknowledge that there's possibly differences in how you're going about that, and your behaviors, or the changes that you've made at your house, and maybe they're not being they're done differently at the other parent's house. So I think just kind of acknowledging what those are, and then also indicating, you know, here's what they are, and here's why this is important to me, that, you know, you wash your hands regularly, or you use hand sanitizer or mouthwash, or you wear a mask, and here's how it can be really helpful for you, and helpful for you while you're at your other parent's house, and how you can help, you know, help create, you know, a positive health image at their house as well. So just having those conversations. I think some parents, if you need to, you can send over those supplies, right? Send a mask, send hand sanitizer, send items that you believe would help protect your child while they're at the other parent's house. And at the same time, just acknowledge that, you know, while you may do it differently, as parents, you both have the same goal, and the goal is to keep your child safe. And so, you know, while it may look different and your behavior looks different, that underlying goal is the same. And for the child who's going back and forth, if they have the tools that they need to use, at both places, you know, then it doesn't become a battle with the other parents that they need something there if you send it already, if that's important, you know, if that's important, or you're doing it differently.
Absolutely. Great. Thank you so much. Another question we have is for parents who are working full time from home and now children are homeschooling, any tips on how to balance that? You know, I'm still maintaining my work responsibilities, now adding in the responsibilities of homeschooling. Any advice there?
I think this is the number one challenge for parents right now. And I think just acknowledging that this is all new, uncharted territory for the majority of people, and we're all just trying to figure it out, and recognizing that, you know, your particular needs look different than, say, your sibling who has children, or that friend who lives next door with their children. So, and your particular needs on a Monday may look different than what they look like on a Tuesday. And so, really, it's the key is to be flexible. It's to be communicative with your children and your children's teachers, and as well as your work, you know, your colleagues and your managers, and you know, roll out what might be expectations, what are reasonable expectations, and then, you know, also communicate if things aren't going accordingly on any particular day. So I think it's nice to have a structure and a schedule as a guideline to adhere to, you know, but as we all know, in this situation, some days they just don't look like our pretty picture in our planner. And so to not be too hard on yourself when it doesn't look that way. No, you're not alone in all of that. And then to, you know, to adjust and adapt, right? So I think children are learning best in the morning. Maybe teenagers are learning best in the afternoon. What's the right schedule and the right mix for your student? And then for you, do you have calls to be on in the morning? And so that means you can't be right there with your student and your child, helping them at that time. You know, can the call be moved? Can you help your child with their homework in the afternoon? You know, looking for ways to be flexible can be really helpful. And also knowing that sometimes just, you know, those rules and schedules go out the door, and you know, and sometimes our children are just as frustrated as we are, and things are moving at a slower pace now that we're working from home, and that's okay. Can we shift our work to a different time, to, you know, working later in the evenings after our kids have gone to bed, so that we can spend that time with them, helping in school, helping them with their schoolwork. And I think also it's important to know that, you know, your child or your children are no further behind any other children in this, under these circumstances, which happens to be every child in the country. At this point, they're no further ahead and they're no further behind. And we're all making adjustments.
Absolutely. And I know these days I'm just giving myself some more grace. Okay, right?
Well said, Tiffany. Well said.
Okay, I have another question for you, Missy. So, you know, for families who are considered very social and always out and about, the isolation that we've been all living in for the past few months has been more challenging for some than others. Are there any ways to experience that connection that's similar to the in-person socialization? I know Zoom and all these online platforms I know I've been utilizing, but are there any other ways that we can kind of simulate that socialization?
That's a great question. I think depending on family needs or what was normal beforehand for socialization, um, kind of determines where you are and what you need. Uh, so I know, Zoom and FaceTime, calls, or just, online platforms getting together. For kids, it could look like um, play dates on Zoom, right? I know my daughter did one the other day with her best friend, and probably for an hour, they just were each in their rooms showing each other all sorts of, things that they're working on, and just talking about things. They went out and rode bikes while like having the phone mounted on the bike in the neighborhood. So just, depending on who your child is and what they need, I think that's one way of socially connecting. Uh, Video games are another way that children are connecting with their friends and their classmates, by sharing their screen names, and they're all playing some of the same games. I know at our house we had to relax the rules about that a little bit, because they really need that connection, that social connection with their friends. You could do Zoom meetings with family members that you typically see, every Sunday. We've been celebrating birthday parties, and having family meals together with the computer just propped up on the table, so we can all see everybody on the other end. And that's another way of connecting. And then of course there's email and texts and those things. And another really nice way of connecting is letter writing. And certainly that plays in for children, and learning skills. Typically kids aren't writing letters anymore, but it can help with English, and it can be kind of an assignment, but fun if you're writing something to grandma, or it can be an art project that you're drawing something and you send it to grandparents or a family member. And who doesn't love getting mail? And so that's another way of staying connected with each other. And then there's drive-by birthday parades, or we're going to visit a friend, but we're driving by and we're just going to socially distance and wave out the window. Just a way of seeing each other and connecting. I think we can do in various ways and get creative, right? The idea is to realize that we're not stuck in the situation, and so that we can be a little creative while we are adhering to all the specific quarantine restrictions around the country.
Thank you so much, Missy. I appreciate your time today, and hope that you and your family stay well. So we will be in touch again soon. Take care.
Well, thank you. You too. Thanks.
Bye-bye.
Bye.